Hi there, everyone. We have my good friend Graham Atkinson here. And
Hello.
before we chat to Graham, just to let you know, this podcast is brought to you by CBD1, purveyors of the finest CBD in the world, and their unique highly bioavailable formula called the Absorb range. Most CBD, when you take it, you absorb 10 to 12% of it, and that's fine. It works. But when you take their bioavailable Absorb range from CBD1, almost 100% of it is bioavailable. It gets in your system. So it's a really efficient way of taking CBD. So thanks to CBD1 and Carnicopia, the organic, regenerative organ meat supplements that have their quite unique male and female gender specific organ meat supplements, which are Goddess for women with ovaries in and Alpha for men with bulls testicles in. Amazing. Go and look up their stuff. Fantastic. Anyway, and when I take the Alpha, my oh my, I feel a difference. Really regenerating and energizing and lifting. So, on the back of Carnicopia, let's talk to Graham here, who is Graham. You're actually the very first person I met who told me you were a carnivore.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, way back. So, as far as I'm concerned, you were way ahead of the game, really, compared to many people.
Possibly, it felt like I'd been, lost in the wilderness myself for quite a while. But when I
Mm,
finally, essentially, I lost my own gut health and started doing my own research and, you know, realised that carnivore is the ultimate elimination diet. And I've never looked back. That was 2018. I think I went full carnivore.
did you? So prior to that, you mentioned your gut health. So
Mm.
what were you experiencing before that?
Yeah, so if you don't know, I trained as a pharmacist. I sort of never been too clinical. Went down the management route, and I sort of ended up in NHS bureaucracy here in the UK. And part of my job was to look at guidelines, chair guideline committees, look at clinical trials evidence and that sort of thing. So I was just completely immersed in the NHS Eat Well plate, from Public Health England, which is, get your fibre, get your 5 a day, very low amount of fat, eat your fish on the side, a bit of dairy, but red meat, not sure about that. So I was doing that for many years, and I've always been an athlete. I've been a very active cyclist and runner, and I was just fueling myself with carbs all the time.
Yeah.
And then I got into my
How
sort
did you
of
feel?
for much of my life, I was absolutely fine. I mean, I could
Yeah.
literally, I've got a very fast metabolism and I can just burn anything. I used to, I could have puddings and, chocolate and ice cream and just burn it off, and I would get quite hot and then feel, I didn't seem to suffer in many ways at all. But as I approached my sort of 50s, I'm now about to turn 60 this year, but as I approach my 50s,
What?
um,
Stop. You're about to turn 60.
I'm 60 this year, Nick. Yes.
What kind of sorcery is this? Wow.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so, but
Keep up the good work then, Graham.
yeah, exactly. But if I look back at pictures of myself now, sort of 15 years ago, and I didn't look well. You could see it in my face. I've got pictures, around the house, and I had this sort of droopy eye sort of look and a bit puffy around here. But I felt okay. But then I think what I've come to understand is that our health and wellness is way more than sort of just chemical, and we are a soul having a physical experience, aren't we? So the psyche, our mind, the soul, all has an impact on our bodily health, and that's a topic for another day. But
Yeah.
but I came from the place of believing that we're just a bag of chemicals, and that what goes in is what we're made of, and the body will sort it out. And that kind of started to fall apart for me as I approached my 50s, and I started getting quite a few sort of CNS, central nervous system, sort of pains and like burning pains in my legs, in my feet, in my knees, in my back, in my head. That was coming on and off. I thought, well, that's a bit weird. And I thought, is that sort of shingles, chickenpox sort of re-emerging? Never really had any rashes as such, but it was just tingling and burning. And then I started sort of lower bowel issues, having upset, having to rush to the loo and think, oh well, what I had yesterday must have not agreed with me, and this sort of thing. And at this point I was eating lentils and tinned fish and pulses, and I was going to town on the sort of, yeah, I was sort of living the pescatarian. I didn't eat chicken, and I don't think I ever ate red meat.
Right.
Um, and I was having quite a difficult time in the NHS with my career at this sort of time, and I was a bit unsettled. But I didn't really put it down to work stress, but I think that's probably was part of it as well. But then I got into running. I got into long distance running, and I entered a few really silly long races, and I started training for one race in particular. There's a 5-day ultra race. It's sort of the length of Wales, over the mountains. So you're running for like 9, 10 hours a day for 5 days in a row over the mountains. So I entered
That
this,
is
and
not meant to be healthy.
no, it's not healthy at all. I think I look back on that time now and I realise I was running away from my life. Really, I think that's what I was
Right.
doing. I was in a number of ways, but probably my work life, I was running away from it. But the training, so I'd be running 7, 8, 9 times a week. I'd be doing 2, 3, 4, 5 hour runs on a Sunday. And we're talking up in the hills, sort of near to where we both live. Sort of away from anywhere. Really rough stuff. And I was doing this on my diet, and I was going okay. But then my wife and I, because my wife's a pharmacist as well, and she is clinical. She calls me a fake pharmacist. She's the real pharmacist.
Right.
Uh, but we'd both got into sort of low carb and reversing type 2 diabetes, and we were both sort of running clinics, not clinics, sort of groups in our own time, helping type 2 diabetics recover their metabolic health. And the more we got into the sort of research and the primary evidence, we started to question everything about diet, and what we're told. And quite quickly, I came to realize that the diet I was eating was not at all healthy. And so I decided quite quickly that I needed to go on this elimination diet and go carnivore. So I went into our local little town that you know well, Nick, and I went to the butchers that we know, and I said, right, stock me up with some meat. And I came home and I got ribeye. I got a ribeye steak that first day, and I had the ribeye, and I can just remember the exploding in my mouth and the feeling of it. It was almost like my body was going, yes, at last. Why is it taking you so long? So I literally stopped everything that I was eating, and pretty much from that day. I mean, I do have the odd treat around Christmas, and if I get pushed into eating things when I'm out with friends, I will have the odd you know uh, um, chips possibly, but they never agree with me, but I'll sort of do it. But so really from middle of 2018, I went full carnivore. We're talking steak, but mainly beef, liver, eggs, sometimes pork sausages, sometimes bacon, but not very much. And I also, not long after that, I got into, there's a great American doctor called William Davis, I think he wrote a book called Undoctored, and then he's written another book called Supergut. And in that, it talks about ways to populate your gut with the appropriate microbiome.
Yeah.
And something that I've found works really well for me is fermenting double cream. So I've got two different cultures I put on. I ferment them for about 36, 40 hours, and you put double cream in. You sort of put a spoon of the last fermentation in to set it off, and 36, 40 hours later, you almost need a knife and fork to eat it. It's just solid,
Wow.
and it's beautiful, and that's what I have. So it's like if you've had Cornish clotted cream, it's that. It's like that basically.
Is it?
So I did this. I pretty much overnight went full carnivore. Like extreme keto. You were talking zero carb,
Okay.
zero carbohydrate, and I was messing around with. I think at the time these sort of the glucose meters that you can wear. The 24/7 glucose meters had just arrived in the UK, so
Right.
I got one of those
Yeah.
and measured my blood. Well, it's not blood sugar; it's interstitial glucose, but it's a proxy for your blood sugar. And I literally was below the minimum that is deemed healthy. So my blood sugar, I forget the units now. You might remember them, but I think I was like 3.6 to 3.9, literally all day, every day, all night. When I ate, when I didn't eat, it was the same. When I went for a run, very very little variation in my blood sugar. And of course, as we know, what's happening is my liver is making the 1 teaspoon of blood sugar that we need. It's making it from fat and protein.
Yeah.
I didn't need to eat it. So I felt when I first converted to full carnivore, I did feel a bit tired. I mean, the people talk about the keto flu. I never really felt unwell, but I just felt a bit tired, and I was still running. I was still going out and doing, silly long runs. But it took about 4 or 5 days, and I no longer felt tired. And it felt to me like a new sort of furnace started, inside me. And I think what I understand is your mitochondria in your body are switching from basically sugar burning to fat burning, and it just takes a few days for those enzymes and the other bits and bobs that your cells need to convert over. So
Right.
once that 5 days was through, I mean, I was doing. I found out afterwards I could set off and do a run on a Sunday morning, so no breakfast,
Yeah.
and I could do a 4 hour run without eating anything. And my limit was about 4 hours, and after that, I thought, right, I need to eat something now. And I did do the race in May 2019, and yeah, there was 440 people started it, and I was 53 at the time, and I came 15th in the end. Um,
Wow.
and I think, I think I was the fastest over 50-year-old that there's ever been in that race. And basically, I was watching all these carb-fueled athletes falling apart all around me. I was having a bit of coconut oil, a bit of butter, the odd sort of cooked burger here and there, in the day, but not eating a lot. Everybody else was swigging, the sort of full sugar Coke and everything else, and having Haribos. And within 2 or 3 hours, some of them were throwing up. They're having headaches. And I was absolutely fine. So I just think this is the way we are. Certainly for me,
Yeah.
it works for me. I'm not saying everybody should go this way, but if you do your due diligence and look at human ancestry, we are keto, carnivore, fat. I think we're actually lipivores. I think is probably what we are. We are fat eaters.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. Because I've watched this survival program on TV called Alone.
Hmm.
It's really compelling, actually. It's like the ultimate uh, sort of reality TV. They take 10 survivalists and drop them in the Arctic, and
Hmm.
they've got to survive there on their own. And the one big thing by the end of it all, any of them who've made it through, are looking for is fat,
Mm.
fat, fat, and fat. It's fine
Yeah.
catching an animal and eating it, but
Mm.
if it's a lean animal, their
No
body
good.
just can't get what it needs. It's the
Yeah.
fats that they go
Yeah.
looking for. They don't go looking for the berries and the fruits. They're emergency. They come back to those if
Yeah.
there's nothing else.
Yeah. That's your starvation diet, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, um, you had this lag of a 4 or 5 days worth of energy drop.
Mm.
It's really interesting how you describe that furnace lighting sort of thing. Because I
Mm.
remember 20 years ago, I learned about metabolic typing.
Hmm.
And my tutor, I was then shown that by my tutor I was high fat and higher protein.
Right. Yeah.
That was my metabolic type,
Mm.
as it were. And
Mm.
the very first day I started that diet, which I had pate, liver pate.
Mm.
I did have it on carbs. I had it on a dark brown sort of rye, German rye bread kind of thing.
Hmm.
But it vividly sticks in my mind because I had it and I remember driving to work. And
Hmm.
on the drive, I was thinking, I'm on rocket fuel.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
vividly remember this feeling, a sense of
Yeah.
energy, abundant energy that's never left me.
Mm. Mm.
And prior to that, I used to get brain fog in the afternoon
Mm.
and put it down to then I was a teacher, the stress of my job.
Mm.
And now I realize, no, it was the pasty and chips I'd had for, or sandwich or
Yeah.
whatever. It was the heavy duty carbs I was starting
Yeah.
the day and fueling myself with that were causing this problem.
Mm.
Um,
And I think many of us, Nick, we sort of live our lives prior to this sort of event, and we accept our, how we feel as normal.
yeah,
And what we don't realize is there's another level, or there's a better place that we can, be in. And until you've been in that place, you're quite happy with where you were.
yeah,
You just accept, well, this is just life. I get a headache twice a week and I feel shattered at the weekend or whatever, and
yeah,
you just think, well, I'm just getting old, or
yeah.
whatever.
I'm tired every afternoon because of
Yeah.
my job.
Yeah.
When
Mm.
actually, yeah, we've disconnected our body
Mm.
from and listening to our body,
Absolutely.
particularly with
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Yeah. I was going to say just the same thing. I mean, I probably for the first time I learned to listen to my body's hunger. So I now, I mean, I'll eat one or two, well, mainly 2 meals a day.
Yeah,
I never feel hungry in the morning. I don't, you know, I don't feel pressured into eating socially when other people are eating. I listen to what my body wants. I did a 3 day fast the other week. I think it was when I last saw you, wasn't it? I'd just done it,
yeah, yeah,
and I thought I'm going to do a 72-hour fast, and I just, you know, the first day absolutely fine, the second day absolutely fine, and then partway through the third day, it was probably approaching about 64, 65 hours since I'd last eaten. I just felt incredibly hungry. And I thought, right, well, it doesn't need to be 72. I'm just going to listen to my body, and
yeah.
I went and had 6 fried eggs and felt absolutely great.
What do you fry them in?
Oh, butter, of course, yeah.
That's bad for you, Graham, isn't it?
No, no,
Saturated
don't,
fat.
don't
Go on.
believe that. Don't
So,
believe the
so,
lies.
so
Yeah.
for someone who there's plenty of people under that
Mm.
impression that
Yeah,
saturated fat is bad for you.
yeah,
Can you kind of, in a nutshell, tell us
yeah.
why
Well,
it's
it's you can go back and look at the science of this and the sort of politics and the sort of the spin, and it goes. Ansel Keys is a sort of infamous figure in this, isn't he? In sort of the 1960s in America, but essentially it goes back to the sugar lobby in America, and they hired Ansel Keys and some other researchers to produce the evidence that saturated fat is harmful, and this was the infamous 7 country study, which was a manipulated data set. I think President Eisenhower had just had a heart attack or 2 heart attacks, and America was running scared of heart disease at the time. And the cause was the change in the diet. More sugar, probably more seed oils coming in, and they blamed it on fat. And since that day, the world's been scared, or the Western world anyway, has been scared of saturated fat, particularly because we're told that polyunsaturated fats are heart healthy, which is an absolute lie. I mean, the opposite is true. We need saturated fat.
yeah,
Our bodies are composed of saturated fat. We've demonized cholesterol. Every cell in our body has a membrane around it, and the membrane is at least 50% cholesterol. cholesterol's so important to our health that our liver makes it and our brain makes it. Our brain makes its own cholesterol. So, why would we take a drug to reduce something that's been essential for human health for millennia? So
because our body's making too much of it.
I think that's the other fallacy, isn't it? That we've been I call it inculcated now. I no longer call it brainwashed or educated. It's inculcated. It's just repeated lies that, the bigger the lie that they tell, the more it's believable, isn't it? And we've all been inculcated to fear our bodies. Your body is weak and it's going to fail you. You've been dealt a faulty set of genes. Oh, and by the way, there's a pathogen out there that's about to come and get you. That's another lie.
A bug going round.
Yeah. So what I now know, it's not believe, I know, is that our bodies are the most amazing, self-healing, creature, on the planet. We are amazing, and what most people have come to understand as symptoms of a dis-ease, and it is dis-ease, so body's not at ease. The symptoms are actually your body in the healing phase. I had a swap roles with yesterday, and I interviewed a wonderful practitioner, and we were talking all about the sort of how mainstream Western medicine has gone very wrong. And it goes back hundreds of years. I'm actually writing a blog on this at the minute, but we've all come to believe that symptoms are signs of a disease or an infection or whatever. And none of it is true. That when we get symptoms, when we feel uncomfortable, it is our body finishing off a healing process, most of which we were never aware of. So there's some kind of trauma or some kind of shock that we've been dealing with subconsciously, and when it's dealt with, we get a skin rash, or we might get a headache, this sort of thing, or a fever. And these are signs of our body returning back to normal and should not be feared. But all too often people rush to the medic, ask for an antibiotic, take analgesics, etc. And it's become a very persuasive, attractive lie in the Western world. But at the end of the day, it's big business.
If someone let's just say, for example, you've got a bit of a temperature, a bit of a cold, whatever it might be, and you take your Lemsip to suppress that fever, and fever makes you feel a bit lousy, let's face it. You do take it and you feel better.
Yeah. Well, the symptoms go away, but probably you start to feel better because the fear of the symptoms has gone away, because it's that you've had this Lemsip or whatever. So, when you've been trained to believe that the symptoms you're feeling, the fever and the pain and the aches, is a bad thing.
Yeah, it's your enemy.
Yeah. So I think it's the fear of the symptoms is probably the biggest factor here. And if you're no longer scared of symptoms and you go, thank you, body, thank you for looking after me, thank you for healing me, I'm so appreciative of, the way you've cared for me, happy days. I very, very rarely get ill now. Since I've gone full carnivore, I can't remember when I last had a cold. Not that that's a thing. Most of my friends and family get ill regularly. If you don't know, I worked on the front line in a GP practice in 2020, all the way every day, went into work 2020, all the way through 21, was never ill, not at all. I didn't take any of those tests because they're a joke, but I never had any symptoms that would require me to take a test. And I didn't take any prophylactic injections to help to make me feel better either. And so I think if we just look after our body with the right diet, we'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah. I mean, I tell my patients that pain is your friend. We've been taught that pain
Mm,
is our enemy. And a
mm,
simple example is if you see those children born with that very rare genetic condition where they can't feel pain.
hmm
And when you see them in their, as they get to 10, 12, their teens, they've got scars everywhere. They may have lost fingers, toes, or
mm,
even a limb.
right.
And it's because they cannot feel pain. So they'll
Mm,
lean against a radiator, busily
mm,
melting their skin to third
mm,
degree burns or whatever it might be.
mm,
And that friend is not with them. And it's catastrophic
yeah,
for them in the long run.
yeah,
And that's the perfect example of why, when you've got that pain, it's normally a message of
of
some kind
course.
of
Yeah,
protective mechanism occurring.
yeah. Well, of course. And I mean, I think, I mean, now with the advancement in, I don't, is it MRI? I don't know which one it is, but they've shown people with back pain, the pain, the actual neurons that are firing in back pain, they are not at the site of where the pain, where the patient or the person feels the pain, so the lumbar region.
Yeah.
The pain is created in the brain.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's created and it's basically a survival program. So and it's again, too much detail for this discussion, but essentially, when your psyche, when your subconscious detects a threat, it will create a pain in the body to get your attention or to change your behavior to protect you. And it's exactly the same as if you walk near the edge of a cliff, you'll suddenly feel a bit dizzy and your knees will go weak, and it's your brain creating a temporary weakness and dizziness to make sure you don't go off the edge.
Draw you away.
Yeah, and so that's what pain is. In my in my understanding,
Yeah.
it's the subconscious psyche creating. It's like a little tap on your head. Like, okay, are you paying attention? Because we're not going to do what what
Yes.
threatens you. You know.
Yeah. And back to carnivore. So
Mm.
obviously you're consuming fair amounts of what the mainstream would say is too much fat and too much protein. So what's going to happen to your kidneys, for example? Are they going to collapse soon, Graham?
Well, the mainstream would say so, but it's not happened, and it's not going to happen. I've done my research. I've listened to there's plenty of great carnivore docs out there. You've got Sean Baker, and I like there's Ben Bickman. He's not a carnivore doc, but he's certainly a keto biochemist. And the I can't quite remember the exact detail, but essentially this idea that protein, kills your kidneys, was a false extrapolation of a sort of rat study. I think.
Okay.
I think it was one of these things where they've done a very small experiment on a small number of rodents, and they've taken something out of context and drawn this conclusion that should never have been applied to human health.
Right.
But so the protein kidney thing, that's not real. The cholesterol, that's another psyop. That's
Yeah.
all false.
So your
Saturated,
arteries aren't clogging up.
far from it. No, far from it.
So what does cause the arteries to narrow then?
Well, it's so cardiovascular disease is certainly progressed with insults to the inside of your cardiovascular system. So it's primarily the arteries,
Yeah.
and if you listen to there's some really good. I sort of followed Ivor Cummings for a long time,
Yeah, he's good.
and Dr. Malcolm Kendrick.
Oh yeah.
He's written some really good books on the sort of genesis of cardiovascular disease, and what it comes down to is repeated insults or damage to your cardiovascular system, the lining of your arteries that are not being repaired fully. So that damage could be it could be heavy metals, it could be high blood pressure, it could be carbohydrates, and that's a big factor. It could be polyunsaturated fatty acids. Could be stress, could be smoking, um, or all of those things. And normally what happens is the body will repair the damage. And interestingly, cholesterol's involved in the repair of the damage. So the demonizing of cholesterol is like blaming firefighters for starting fires. We did a survey and we found that of 10 house fires in the city last week, the firefighters were at every single one.
Yeah.
So let's sack the firefighters.
Get rid of them. They're clearly
Yeah,
causing the fires.
and that it sounds ridiculous, but that's kind of how cholesterol's been demonized, and it's at the site of the damage, repairing the damage. And people who have plaques, these sort of fatty plaques, they're basically that's sort of macrophages and other cells in the blood that are scavenging the dead tissue in the lining of the artery that's no longer needed. So the body's gone in and repaired, and the problems arise when the repair can't be completed fully because the core materials aren't available, and those core materials being proteins and fats.
Right.
So when the proteins and fats aren't available, the body makes do with other things like calcium. So you end up with, this is where you get the your hardened arteries with calcium being deposited in there.
So your body's kind of grabbing anything it can to
Yeah,
patch up.
yeah,
When if
exactly.
you put cholesterol in, it'd make a nice smooth lining again, would it?
Well, yeah, cholesterol's involved in lots of things in the body. Trafficking or moving other essential building blocks, if you like, around the body is one of those things. And if the right building blocks aren't available, then the body will use whatever it has to hand.
Yeah. So what about say somebody who has been told they've got atherosclerosis, they've got narrowing of their arteries,
Mm,
plaques, and so on.
mm.
Can they? Is there a way to change that? Does carnivore change that? For example, is there behavior they can do to begin to improve their situation?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably hypothesizing here because I doubt there's a clinical trial out there. It would never, it would never get through ethics, would it?
No.
We've got these people with advanced heart disease. We're going to put them on a carnivore diet.
Yeah.
Nobody would pay for the trial, and it wouldn't get through the ethics committee. So I think we need to say there probably is no evidence that we can point to. But if you basically need to stop doing the things that have brought you to that place. Be that a high carb diet, the stress, not sleeping properly, not getting enough natural light, being under blue light all the time, not being grounded, all of these things. So, if it were me in that situation, I'd be wanting to do everything I could to reverse the damage, or at least slow down the damage. You're then into a repairing situation, and you think, well, okay, well, let's listen to my body and what it actually needs. And as we both found, it's crying out for fat.
Yeah.
And it's crying out for saturated fat. It's not crying out for margarine.
No.
It's crying out for butter and beef tallow, and lard.
Yeah.
Those are the things that make you feel good. So
it's very, very ingrained, though, Graham. This idea that those things, people
yeah,
just
absolutely.
look aghast.
They do
Suggest that.
But even somebody goes for a heart scan and they say, well, 3 of your coronary arteries are nearly blocked. I mean, if you look at the evidence, and this is published evidence from autopsies, so where people have died of a heart attack, whatever that is, and I don't think it's got anything to, well, it certainly hasn't got much to do with what the mainstream says it's to do with. But what they've shown in autopsies is that the site of the heart attack is not close, or it's not supplied by the blood vessel that's blocked.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you do have coronary artery blockages or semi-blockages, a narrowing, what the body does, the heart, it builds what they call collateral blood vessels. So they basically, it's like the motorways being closed, and they send you on a diversion.
Yeah.
So the blood still gets through, and you can go online and you can look at these contrast um, angiograms where
Yeah.
they inject a contrast medium above the blockage, and you can see the blood going to the blockage, and then it stops, and then it reappears below the blockage and goes back up to the blockage.
Wow.
So the blood is getting past the blockage. It's not a problem. So you don't need a stent. That's another thing that doesn't work. And the heart, they've shown absolutely conclusively. There was an Italian pathologist who, I think, he dissected about 2,000 heart attack victims and showed that there is no correlation between any so-called coronary blockage and the site of the heart attack that they'd had.
So what on earth is a heart attack then? Come on.
Right. Yeah. Well, again, that's probably a longer discussion for another
Yeah.
day. But
Okay. We'll make
well,
mental note.
yeah, the interview I did yesterday with this wonderful practitioner, a heart attack is again, it's a healing symptom. It's not a particularly welcome healing symptom, but it is a sign that you have gone beyond a very stressful situation, probably involving a loved one. So it would be like separation from a partner, or loss of a partner, loss of a child, and what the body is doing, and it's a bit counterintuitive, because a lot of these self-healing processes that run in our bodies are actually they're coming from our brainstem. They were put there millions of years ago when we were, we're not talking Neanderthals. We were probably swimming in the sea, as some kind of primordial creature. That's where these programs come from, and they made sense at that time in terms of preserving life.
Yeah.
So what your body is doing is making the heart stronger by growing some more tissue. And the heart's a very complicated electrical organ, and when you start adding new bits to it, I think you get short circuits, and there's probably a lot more than that to it. But in simple terms, your body's trying to improve the strength of the heart, but it can't stop. It's not like it can. It's not like building a house where nobody has to live in it. If you had to build a house and everybody's living in it while you're building it, there'd be it'd be uncomfortable, wouldn't it?
Yeah, mayhem.
Yeah. So the body's trying to do that all the time.
Right.
It's repairing and strengthening. And I believe that a heart attack is the sort of end phase of one of those strengthening programs.
So that brings us back to things like stress,
Mm.
grounding, and
Yeah.
being not just literally grounded to the earth, but in yourself, sort of
Yes.
centered feeling that
Yeah.
which many philosophers and not just Eastern philosophers actually, talk about now, the moment, not the future, not the past, but being in the now.
Being in the now, and we were talking about this before we got started, but not living in fear.
Yeah.
It's so easy to live your life in fear, and certainly in a stress. I mean, we probably most of your viewers, listeners, will know about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. We should be in sympathetic state during the day and parasympathetic overnight. But I think a lot of us in the Western world are living in a sympathetic state 24/7.
Yeah.
And we never get that rest and digest phase in our daily life cycle. So, letting go of fear, which is easier said than done, but that's, I think, is a key to living well.
Yeah.
Particularly in these times now.
I look at my garden, which should, like everything in nature, should be this. They call it diurnal. We've got daylight and night.
Mm.
That's the pattern that we dance with, and my garden is lit up all night by horrible digital streetlights. So the stress of affecting us, it's got to be affecting the plants, the animals, the insects. They are being utterly blasted with this bizarre street light all the time.
Yeah, it's not natural, is it? It's no, I think we've all, hopefully most of us anyway, have experienced sort of going away and maybe camping in the, and you sleep so well when you camp. You get a tent, you're laid on the ground. There's no street lights, there's no traffic noise, the air's fresh, and it just feels totally different, doesn't it? But that's how we evolved. That's our natural state, our natural home.
Yeah. Now, one thing that people would say, well, there's a load of things actually. But tell me about vitamin C then, Graham, because you can't have any vitamin C. You can't take it in. It's very important for us.
Yeah.
You are eating only animals. I'm guessing you eat fish as well, do you?
Very rarely.
Right.
Very rarely.
You'll eat red meats and a bit
Yeah.
of pork here and there. Chicken?
I very rarely eat chicken, but basically because of how it's farmed. If I could get hold of game, yeah. I mean, if I eat fish, I'll try and get line caught fish rather than farmed fish.
Yes, yeah. Stay away from the farm stuff if you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. But so vitamin C. So yeah, that's another interesting one because vitamin C is in meat. It's in liver. It's in eggs. But if you're on a carnivore diet, you don't need much vitamin C. You mainly, one of the main requirements of vitamin C is to actually help you metabolize carbohydrates.
Oh.
So if you're not eating carbohydrates, you don't need the vitamin C. Simple as that.
Wow.
So I've not got scurvy. I don't think I look like I've got scurvy.
Yeah.
I mean, I
secretly sucking on limes and lemons and
no, I don't go down that route. I don't need anything. I was a little bit concerned about things like that initially, but a few a bit of research. Sean Baker's very good on this. You don't need vitamin supplements. I mean, I eat organ meats. I'll eat liver. I'll eat kidneys. I'll eat heart. That's mostly what. Yeah, I don't go anywhere else. But for those people who can't stomach that literally, then yeah, supplement with the products you were mentioning before, Nick. But I quite like liver, and I actually like my meat very rare. I literally, to prepare my tea, I will get a cast iron skillet, chuck some butter in it, get it really hot. I will put a steak in it, give it 2 minutes, 3 minutes on one side. I'll turn it over, and I'll put the liver in when I turn the steak over, and then I'll turn the liver over after about a minute. And then, so it's now been cooking for about 4 or 5 minutes. I'll turn the pan off, and 3 or 4 minutes later, just pop it on my plate, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's sort of seared on the outside, really tasty, but on the inside, it's raw. It's the meat and the liver, and I find it extremely palatable, and I don't get bored. That's the people say, don't you get bored? Don't you want a treat? Well, no, I don't actually. I mean, and I don't think I'm probably a little bit odd, but I don't think I'm, I don't think it's that hard to do once you feel the benefits. I mean, for me, that's the thing. My wife, she can eat vegetables and puddings and things, and it doesn't seem to trouble her too much. But I know, I mean, that's maybe we should say this: if you're going to go full carnivore, be prepared for if you do try something, your body will tell you very quickly that's not actually food. So I can, if I go out and I do try something, I mean, I had before Christmas, I got sort of coerced into having a chocolate brownie, and I knew within about 3 minutes, I just had this buzzing in my head, and I thought, oh dear, I know what comes next. Yeah, and I knew that it wasn't good for me.
Is that because your microbiome's changed?
I presume it's that. I think. Sorry, my dog. If you hear a scratching, my dog's asking to go out. Let me just. Off we go. There we go. Yeah. So I think basically your body's just used to being clean. It's almost like the noise is removed, and you can now hear your body talking to you, whereas before it's like trying to if we were trying to have a conversation in a nightclub with 200 other people and some music, I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if we go outside and we stand in a field, we can hear perfectly well. And that's the sort of difference when you go through the ultimate elimination diet. Suddenly you're attuned to the messages that your body has always been saying to you, but you could never hear them.
Yeah. And are there any, if someone starts this kind of diet and tests it out, are there
Mm-hmm.
things, sort of side effects they might get initially? You've mentioned the fatigue, a sort of period where they might feel a bit tired before the energy starts to kick in and the mitochondria readjust.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Well, I think it depends where you're coming from. I mean, I was already fairly keto,
Yeah.
so I didn't eat a lot of carbs and sugar, but I did eat a lot of plants. So, one thing that you will probably almost certainly get is like an oxalate dumping. So, a lot of plants are full of oxalates, which are not good for humans. They are plant toxins, and so if you're eating a lot of plants, those oxalates will be stored in your body. And when you stop eating oxalates, your body goes, right, coast is clear, these oxalates are coming out. And they will come out through your skin, you'll get skin rashes, they'll probably come out through detoxification. I don't think they go out through your kidneys very well, so they tend to go out through your bowel and your skin. And people have described crystals coming out through their skin.
Wow.
It's actually oxalate crystals being pushed out of their skin. So that's certainly one thing. I think it depends how. I mean, if you're going to go very low carb or no carb, if you've previously been used to eating carbohydrates, you'll find it more difficult. So if you're on above 50 grams of carbs a day, and most people are probably on several hundred grams of carbs a day. I think low carb is typically measured as below 50 grams. If you're going to go low carb or very low carb, you will feel very tired to start with, and you'll probably get headaches. So, yeah, I mean, I take Epsom salt baths quite a lot, and I think, my body's probably still detoxifying. There's probably stuff still coming out of me, I would have thought. The only supplement I use quite regularly is iodine. So I do use iodine. I also use fulvic minerals and also boron.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's mainly because the soil that our ruminant animals are walking on has been depleted of a lot of these natural essential minerals that we need.
Yeah.
So even if you're eating grass-fed organic meat and pasture-raised eggs and butter, etc., you're probably not getting the mineral balance that, say, your grandparents or your great-grandparents got by eating the same foods.
Yeah.
So I am conscious that I do need to supplement with some minerals, and I will do that most of the year.
Yeah, I noticed I sort of went full on carnivore for 2-3 months, and I got a bit of cramping for a while that then faded away in carbs. My bowel movements slowed down, so I wasn't having bowel movements as often.
Yeah.
And intriguingly, too much information, but hey, we'll send it out anyway. My poo stopped smelling poisonous.
Yeah.
Basically, has almost no smell.
Yeah, the same. I mean, I would say, when I was eating my pulses, and I was probably going to the loo 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And now I'm maybe 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Some days, you just don't think about it. You don't. And yeah, it's a much quicker experience, and and you're not offending anybody else as much as you used to do. Yeah.
I used to have I would get really very loose bowels, and it smelt like poison,
Mm.
and that's all stopped now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I probably cheat a bit more than you, Graham, and have a little bit more treats by the sounds of it anyway.
Mm.
Say treats, just a little bit here and there. Like last night, we did have a chicken, a an organic free range chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And Hannah cooked some potatoes in beef dripping, so I did have a couple of those.
Yeah.
But I am basically high fat and
Mm.
protein and very low carb. I'm pretty much when I have a keto monitor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty much for the last few months been in ketosis every single time.
Yeah.
And then last week, as a little sort of test of myself, right, I went completely bonkers on carbs for a day.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to believe this, right? I started my day last Saturday with a Victoria sponge cake, right, homemade, and it had a whacking great amount of cream in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I satisfied myself with that bit. But then I had toast. Anyway, whatever. And for 2 days after, I emotionally felt all over the place,
Mm.
like highly stressed all of a
Mm.
sudden,
Mm.
jittery, just gut not right,
Yeah.
um, everything gone completely to shit, quite frankly.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh,
And that's quite normal. I do observe it. You know, my wife is pretty good keto, but every now and again she'll, oh, I just fancy some bread, and I can tell. I can
yeah,
tell the next day, you know, that she's had bread. Yeah.
yeah. What about magnesium? Do you get magnesium in
Yeah.
animal?
Sorry. Yeah. I do. I've got magnesium spray, so I will when I remember. But I was. I think I don't. I don't seem to need it as much as I did. But I think when I first went carnivore, a bit like yourself, I felt a bit crampy, and I would just rub magnesium oil into my legs, um, or my chest, that
Mm,
sort of thing.
yeah.
Um,
Okay. I used
so.
to I used to have a slightly podgy, puffy face and a bit of a double chin. That I was always conscious of, really. And
Mhm.
then my wife showed me pictures of myself, sort of reasonably now compared to, sorry, back then, as it were, pre-carnivore.
Mhm.
The difference in just definition of muscle without
Yeah.
having to do anything
Yes. Yeah.
just changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's the thing. If I'm stronger. I don't run as much as I did. I'm not a mad ultra runner anymore. I do, you know, 25, 30 minutes as opposed to a few hours
yeah,
in it. And I'm much more, um, you know, believing of resistance training or weight training as
yeah,
being more essential than aerobic training.
yeah,
I think just walking in nature, going for a hilly walk, raising your body up a hill, a few
yeah,
times a week,
yeah.
doing some resistance training at home, that's for, in terms of longevity, and wellness, that's where the evidence lies.
Interesting.
Mm.
I also had I think I've now realised I'm sensitive to oxalates.
Hmm.
So I've not touched anything green for a long time,
Yeah,
and I've converted my polytunnel into basically a fruit growing
yeah,
zone.
yeah.
Do you have any fruit at all? Because I know some carnivores do, some don't.
Very rarely, Nick. I mean, my wife loves strawberries and blueberries, and yeah, we've got a veg patch here, and Um, I'm growing less veg and mainly fruit. So I've
Yeah,
got raspberries growing. We're going to do strawberries this year.
yeah,
But these are all for my wife and all for the neighbours. I gave a lot of it away last year. I mean, we grew, I think I had 6 tomato plants in the greenhouse, and I must have given hundreds of tomatoes away to the neighbours who didn't
yeah.
eat any of them,
Amazing.
And I just don't need them. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot, potatoes and tomatoes come from the nightshade family, don't they?
That's right. Yeah,
And I know my body does not like nightshades at all.
right.
Potatoes, I can, I mean, at Christmas, I maybe had, one roast potato just because I felt I needed to join in a bit, but that was it.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
Mm.
Fantastic. One other thing I got was and it happened last year, not last year, the year before on Christmas Eve. So that was sort of, I would say maybe 8 to 10 weeks into full on carnivore.
Hmm.
I had the most ferocious attack of what felt like something going on around the kidney lumbar region, that area
Right.
on
Hmm.
my right side, brutal.
Hmm.
And I did end up at A&E because
Wow.
I've never experienced pain like it. But that night I'd been up, I must have got up every 20 to 40 minutes to pee and
Mm.
pee and pee and pee. And I had what felt like prostate irritation. There was all
Mm.
kinds of stuff going on.
Wow.
And I just drank tons of water.
Yeah, or salt. Yeah, I was going to say, probably something I'd recommend is, get yourself some Celtic salt or Himalayan pink
Yeah,
salt,
yeah,
and drink salt water. If you don't feel great for any reason, salt water is wonderful.
really
Yeah,
interesting.
and
Doesn't salt give us heart problems?
that's another that's another lie as well. Yes. At the end of the day, life originated in the sea and it's salt water. Our blood is exactly the same salinity as salt water.
Yeah,
So how can it be harmful to us?
I
We
think
need it.
I think possibly the highly processed salts in highly processed foods may be an
Yes.
issue, but then
Yeah.
it's not just the salts in there that's an issue, is it?
No. No. Well, the salt probably still is because it's just pure sodium chloride, isn't it?
Yeah,
Which the table salt, the very white salt, is not something you should be consuming. Costs a little bit more, but get yourself some decent Celtic salt or some, Himalayan pink salt because they've got a much broader range of minerals in them than
yeah,
just sodium
yeah.
chloride.
And whilst it costs more, it's not prohibitively expensive, is it?
No,
At all.
no, it lasts a long
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so if
Mm.
someone's curious about this, if they've been,
Mm.
I tell you what, we've not talked about anti-nutrients. So
Yes. Yeah.
everyone's told eat veg, eat veg, eat veg.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
what is it about plants that we're trying to avoid?
Oh, right. Okay. So,
Sorry.
well, there's anti-nutrients. So, probably all plants contain a group of compounds called lectins. So, gluten is one of the lectins. I think there's over 100 of them have been described now. But lectins are compounds made by plants and put into the parts of the plants that they don't want animals to eat. So they're essentially poisons. So all seeds, a plant, if you think about it, a plant doesn't want its seeds to be eaten. Probably a few exceptions, monkeys eating, husky fruit and the seeds drop out the other end completely, intact. That's fair enough. But the sort of plants that we eat, we're not. The plant doesn't want us to eat its seed because it's the baby. It's the next generation.
Yeah.
So the plant puts lectins in seeds, and if you didn't know, wheat, barley, any grain is actually a derivative of grass. So
Yeah.
all grains are basically cultivated grasses. And the last time I went past the fields in my area, there was cows and sheep in them, but there was no humans bent down eating the grass. We are not designed to eat grass. Full stop. We are designed to eat animals that eat the grass. So interestingly, if you're a cow or a sheep and you eat grass, which is carbohydrate, it's very starchy carbohydrate, your stomach turns the carbohydrate into fat, and what's actually absorbed into the bloodstream of the cow and the sheep is fat. So they're not absorbing carbs; they're digesting the carbs and turning it into fat with the help of bugs in the stomach, the ruminating them. So cows and sheep are fat eaters too, but they have a gut that can convert carbohydrates into fat. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't possess one of those. So that's the big thing about anti-nutrients is that these lectins, as well as being poisonous, they actually stick to a lot of the things we do need. So a lot of the minerals, a lot of the vitamins, these anti-nutrients. They're called anti-nutrients because they literally suck the good stuff out of the food and stop you from absorbing it. And another aspect of that is the vitamins that are in plants are not animal forms of vitamins. So whether you're looking at vitamin A or vitamin E, there are multiple forms of these vitamins. There is the animal form and there are vegetable forms. And if you eat a plant, you're eating the vegetable form. And if you even get to absorb it, you then need to convert it into the human animal form. And to do that conversion, you need the right metabolism. You need the right minerals and proteins in your body. So for lots of reasons, whatever it says on the label, this plant contains this much protein and minerals, that doesn't mean it's going to end up in you, and it's a good thing if it does.
So the bioavailability, firstly, may well be far less than you'd like it to be.
Yeah, and the bioavailability of eating, animal foods is so much higher.
Yeah, and so these plant-based protein drinks, for example, are they kind of futile?
Yeah, that's just big. It's big business, isn't it? We've got big ag, we've got big food, and we've got big pharma, and it's just one big corporation, one big entity that's making money out of us. And it's a vicious circle. You consume the processed food that's been made in the processed agricultural field, and then sooner or later you're going to need the processed drugs to and it's a very, very good business model. It works extremely well, but you don't have to take part in their game. You can free yourself by eating whole foods, nutritious whole foods that your grandparents ate. I mean, that's one of the acid tests is, if it's got a barcode on it or it comes and it's wrapped in plastic, ignore it because it's not food. Go to your supermarket and walk around the outside. Don't go down all the aisles in the middle because that's where all the crappy food is. Go around the edge, go around the outside, go right to the back of the supermarket because that's where they put the good stuff. And bypass all of the, all of those offers on the ends of aisles and get the hell out of there as quick as you can with the small. I mean, that's the other thing. It's not expensive. I eat. I'll have 3 or 4 eggs for lunch. I'll have a steak or a few sausages and some liver for tea, and I'll have some of my yogurt, and that's all I eat every day. I reckon it probably costs me £10-12 a day.
Yeah.
And I weigh 76 kilos. I'm not a small chap.
Tall guy.
Yeah.
Wow. So we've covered most things there. Well, we haven't really because there's an endless topic. But if someone's wanting to start, what's the basics they can do as a beginning point for this kind?
Well, I think no matter where you're starting from, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or just Western diet, I think if you're moving in a direction of moving towards whole foods, that is a good thing. The greater the proportion of whole foods, whatever choices you make, and I'm not saying carnivore is for everybody. Yeah. Some people, may do totally well on, a vegetarian diet. Yeah. I think vegan's probably a stretch too far.
Because I don't. Tightrope walk, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the issue with even following a vegetarian diet is so you need a certain amount of protein and fat, and then the issue is what comes with it.
Yeah.
And what comes with it is a bunch of carbs and all the lectins, the anti-nutrients. Now, if your body can cope with that and you're doing fine, terrific, well done.
The nearer the equator you are, our physiology is adapted to a lighter type of diet, hasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think there's the sort of metabolic typing. I think there's like 7 different types of mitochondria in the human genome, and if you've evolved from the equator, then you can tolerate more plants and more carbs. But if you've come from the Eskimos and the Inuits, then you need to eat fat. Yeah. So go down the whole food route, and then practice listening to your body and eating when you're hungry, and don't emotionally eat. If something upsets you or you're feeling lonely, find another way to, scratch that itch. Don't, yeah, don't go to the fridge. And I mean, the best way is just don't buy the stuff in the first place. If it isn't in your fridge and the cupboard, when you have those moments of weakness, you're not going to succumb to them.
It's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
And take it gradually. I mean, I did something overnight pretty quick. Because I guess I'm that kind of person. I'm all in. If it, once I'm convinced of something, I'll go for it 100%. But not everybody's like that. So progress, 80-20. If you get an 80% of it right, don't worry about the 20%. Don't beat yourself up. Be kind to yourself. Pat yourself on the back and enjoy life. That's the other thing. Don't become a hermit and a miserable sod. Keep your friends and keep your social life, but stick to your principles.
Yeah. It's so important that, Graham. This idea that don't sit there having eaten something and sit there feeling bad about it. You've got, if you're going to make choices you enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Pleasure.
That's been really, really interesting. Hopefully for viewers, listeners, this will help them give a bit of insight. It would appear that much of what we are told, basically, whatever we're being told, it seems, turn around, walk 180 degrees in the opposite direction, and you're probably heading towards a healthier direction.
Correct. It's like most things in life. It's I don't pay much attention to the news and what governments say anymore. But if I do, it's to do exactly what you said. I know where not to go, and I look elsewhere.
Yeah, look for their signals and go in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Graham, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure. Thanks, Nick.
We'll get you on again for another chat about maybe heart disease or in more depth. Or it will be very, very interesting to talk through a few other elements of what's going on. But
my pleasure, Nick.
Great to have you, and take it easy. Catch up soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.